Hi YouTube, this is Joe Calton with Calton Cutlery. You can visit me on the web, caltoncutlery.com. Alright, so this is the fourth, I think, video in the edge retention tips series I'm doing. I don't know that I'm actually going to number these or anything that formal. Probably just title them edge retention tips and whatever it is that we're talking about. So today what we're going to talk about is the burr, okay? The burr is one of the greatest things ever when it comes to sharpening, okay? Because the burr tells you at what point you're in the sharpening process, okay? I know a lot of guys are very anti-burr, okay? They, talk about, oh my God, do whatever you have to do to avoid creating a burr. Typically, those fellas don't really understand what the burr is, how it's formed, and how to deal with it, okay? Most of the time, I mean, I can sharpen with a burr, I can sharpen without a burr, I can sharpen left-handed, right-handed, it doesn't really matter to me. It's all sharpening, right? Of course, I practice an awful lot more than probably the average guy does. But learning to control that burr and what the burr is at each stage in sharpening is probably the easiest way to learn how to sharpen and how to sharpen repeatedly, okay? So, to kind of sum up here. Okay, here's just a sharp knife, right? Here's a stone. Pretty much when you go to sharpen a knife, you take it, you put the blade on the stone, you raise it up to whatever angle it is you're going to sharpen, and then you abrade on that side, okay, until you feel a burr on this side. Okay, what happens is you abrade on this side, and then you'll feel the burr on this side. Once you feel the burr on this side, now you reverse it. You put the blade on this side, and then you sharpen on this side until you feel a burr on this side, right? Now, once you have a burr on one side, and then you move it to the other side, now you know that both sides of that edge are meeting, okay? But they're meeting, and there's a little bit of a burr sticking out. Okay. Once you have that at your coarsest grit, now go to your medium grit or your fine grit or whatever stone progression that you're using. Chasing that burr back and forth. That burr lets you know when you're done with each step. Once you get to your final stone, the last stone, that's the grit that you want your edge to be. Then what you do is you go ahead and you prepare that burr for removal. Okay, lighter and lighter strokes, each side. And then you can either shear the burr off with a micro burr or a micro bevel. Okay, that works really good on diamond stones like your Lanskys, your DMTs, and your Smiths. Not so good on the Atomas. The Atomas have got kind of the diamonds are a little bit more rounded and they're not sharp and jagged, and so it doesn't really work quite that well on the Atomas. But the Lanskys, the DMTs, and the Smiths, it works beautiful on. Or if you are working with, like I said, the Atoma, or you're working with a Waterstone or like a Norton crystalline stone, stones that are that release grit, easily. Then typically what you do is you stone strop, so you go backwards, a couple of times. Then you take that edge and you pull it through some soft wood, and that'll tear that burr off. And then you stone strop it, usually twice more on each side, to repair the damage from ripping that burr off. Okay, so now you understand what a burr is, how it's used in the sharpening process. If you have a burr on your final edge, okay, so let's say you got your sharpening done, the knife feels sharp, you think it's ready to go, you stick it in your pocket. You pull that knife out, or let's say you used it to shave a little bit of hair and you cut some copy paper with it, or some receipt paper, or some cigarette paper, or whatever, and you thought, okay, well, it's sharp and it's ready to go. Now, the second you take that knife and you go to put it to any kind of real work, let's say you're sharpening a stake, or even sharpening a pencil, really, like a number 2 pencil or a carpenter's pencil, or you go to cut a piece of rope or anything like that, and then all of a sudden it feels sharp, and then it doesn't feel so sharp anymore. Typically what that means is that you have that burr, and what happened was that you didn't remove the burr, you just lined it up. Okay? Then when you and then that kind of lined up burr will shave hair, it'll cut paper, it'll, it will feel sharp. If you look at it down here, it'll look sharp. But the second you put it to any kind of hard use, what happens is that burr that was standing up perfect, you'll just bend over. Now all of a sudden, instead of trying to cut with the top of the burr, now you're trying to cut with the side of the burr, and it won't feel sharp anymore. A couple of ways you can test to see if your burr has been folded over or if it's been removed is to shave hair on both sides of the blade. If you have a knife that will shave hair on one side, okay, so it's popping hair off that side, and then it won't shave on the other side, which this one will, it'll shave on both sides, then typically what that means is that burr is just slightly bent over a little bit. Okay, so on the side that it's bent to, it'll shave hair off, but the side that it's bent away from, that burr is not contacting the hairs, okay, because it's riding up a little bit off of the edge. So that's a good way to check to see if you have a burr that you haven't removed. You can drag it over your thumbnail and see if you feel any roughness there. You can take a Q-tip and run it off of the edge. Okay. Now this only works if you've got a fairly fine final edge grit. Okay, like 250 or 200 grit and finer. So 200 grit, 300 grit, 400 grit, something like that. If you're running like a really, really coarse grit edge so that you get more of a serrated type action, like a 36 or 100 grit edge, which, by the way, that makes a really good bread knife. If you just have a straight edge and you want it to cut bread really easy, just leave it with a really coarse finish on there, like the coarsest stone you have, and it'll make a really aggressive serrated edge out of it, basically. But anyway, take that Q-tip and run it off the edge, and if it catches the fibers in the Q-tip, then that means you probably still got a burr there. You can palm strop it, always away, okay, never towards, always away, and you'd be surprised at how many problems you can feel with the palm of your hand on that edge. You'll be able to feel burrs doing that. You'll also be able to feel chips, and you'll be able to feel rolls a lot of times. So anyway, if you're having a problem with poor edge retention, check and make sure that you've gotten your burr from sharpening off completely. If you haven't, it will feel sharp in hair and newspaper and copy paper and receipt paper and things like that, but the second you go to put it to real work, the edge will fail almost immediately. I mean, it'll feel sharp and then it won't feel sharp at all anymore, and sometimes in that initial cut. It'll be pretty dramatic if you look for it. So again, this is Joe Calton with Calton Cutlery. You can visit me on the web, caltoncutlery.com. Hope you enjoyed the video, and we will see you next time.